Hey there, 7.3, your second to last video for this whole entire unit. Yes, that's right, there's only 4 videos in this unit. I'm doing a little half and half. So after you watch this video, we're going to we'll have a couple classes where we have notes in class. So I'm trying to balance this out for you guys. All right, power equations. Sounds like fun, right? What else better do you have to do today than solve some power equations? All right. So a power equation is defined when you have a variable that is raised to a power. So in your equation, you're going to have some kind of variable raised to some kind of exponent. And yes, we are going to have some fractions in there. So when you solve a power equation, you want to isolate your variable just like you would, multiple other different equations that we've worked with. Here's the big thing that you want to remember. When you are solving, the inverse operation that you're going to do is you're going to raise both sides of your equation to the reciprocal of the power. Because let's review our little review from last time. When you raised an exponent to its reciprocal, so if I raised a to the m over n and I raised that to its reciprocal, you guys remember what the value turned out to be? That's right, it turned out to be a to the first. So you can see why this rule right here becomes very helpful when you're solving power equations. Oh, did anyone catch that step number 4? Check for extraneous solutions. Want to make sure you do that. You never know when those little suckers are going to pop up. All right, it says using the last general rule from day 7.2, which is what we just talked about, raising it to the reciprocal, we are going to solve each one of these for a. So if this is being raised to the 2/3 power, my reciprocal is going to be 3/2. So I'm going to raise both sides here to the 3/2 power. Now I know that when I raise 2/3 to the 3/2, I get 1. So now I've got a to the first. Do I really need to write that 1 up there in the exponent's place? No. So this is 4 raised to the 3/2 power. Oh yes, we need our power over root. So this is going to be equal to the square root of 4 cubed. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. So 2 cubed is going to give us 8. So our a value in this case is 8. Now what you want to go back through is make sure that anytime you're solving an equation, you can check that. Now, I told you that the answer was just 8. What did I forget to do when I was solving? Oh, say right about here. What did I forget to do? Because I took the square root of 4. Ah, that's right. Anytime you take the square root, your answer can be positive or negative. So really, my answer is not just positive 8, it is also negative 8. So when we talked last unit, whenever we solve and we take the square root of a number, and it's actually going to turn out anytime we take an even root, but we'll get to that in a minute, you want to make sure that your answers are positive and negative. So don't forget that. You guys did really well on that on your last test, remembering the plus and minus. So let's continue to remember that. All right, we need to isolate over here. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. So this is going to be the 4th root of a cubed. And somebody want to tell me what 135 divided by 5 is? Thank you, 27. All right, now I'm going to take this 4th root of a to the 3rd and I'm going to change it to a fractional exponent. So remember power over root. So this is going to be a to the 3/4. So this is just basically rewriting from the first step to the second step there. Okay, now raise it to its reciprocal. So we're going to raise it to both sides to the 4/3 power. So on the left, I have a, but on the right here, I now have to take the cubed root of 27 and raise it to the 4th power. Now, cubed roots can only be positive or they can only be negative. They can be both, but when you're solving, if the cubed root is positive, you're taking the cubed root of a positive number, then your answer is going to be positive. If you take the cubed root of a negative number, then your answer is going to be negative. So you're not going to write plus or minus 3 when you answer this question because the cubed root of 27 is just positive 3. So we now have 3, and we're going to raise that to the 4th power. So we only have one answer for this one, and it's just 81. Okay, so when you take the square root or any even root, you do plus or minus with the answer. But if it's an odd numbered root, like a cubed root or a fifth root, you just take whatever the sign is of your what's inside your radical. All right, C, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides here because we got to isolate our variable. So we got 16a raised to the negative 3 halves. Yes, I will deal with that negative in just a minute. 7 minus 5, so that's going to give us 2. All right, now we have to divide both sides by 16. So now I have a raised to the negative 3 halves equals, let's reduce 2/16 while we're at it. So let's just make that 1/8. Now, I don't have to move this to the denominator. I don't have to make this 1 over a to the positive 3 halves, because watch what happens if I multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 2/3. If I, side note here, take negative 3 halves and multiply it by negative 2/3, do I still end up with a value of 1? Yeah, I do, because I end up with multiplying a negative times a negative. So you don't need to take care of that negative on the left-hand side here. And if you have a negative exponent, you can just raise it to another negative exponent. So it'll become positive. I do need to take care of it here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of 1/8. So this is now going to become 8 to the 2/3 power. So I just made that positive. So this is now going to be the cubed root of 8. And once we get that answer, we're going to square it. All right, now this is a cubed root, so do I need to remember to write plus or minus? No, I do not. This is just going to be 2 squared, which is going to give us a value of 4. Okay, let's do a little review here. If I take the square root, if I'm solving and I have a square root in my answer, so first of all, let's get that radical by itself. So I have the square root of 3x minus 2, and let's see, that gives us 4. What operation undoes the square root? Yeah, squaring both sides. So this just becomes 3x minus 2 equals 16. Now we're going to add 2 to both sides. So we got 3x equals 18. Divide both sides by 3. We end up with x equals 6. Okay, now one thing I want you to remember, if you take the square root of something, it's the same as raising it to the 1/2. So that'll come in handy in a little bit here. All right, let's take a look at number 3. I have x to the 2/3 plus 1 equals 5. Isolate that variable. So you now have x to the 2/3 equals 4. What's the reciprocal of 2/3? Right, 3 halves. So we'll raise both sides to the 3 halves. So we now have x equals, we're going to take the square root of 4, raise it to the 3rd power. Remember, power over root. Square root of 4. Do I need to remember my plus or minus here? Yes, I do. Good job for all of those that you remembered. So this is plus or minus 2 raised to the 3rd power. So whether I take positive 2 and cube it or negative 2 and cube it, I'm still going to end up with a positive 8 and a negative 8. So my answers are going to be plus or minus 8. All right, how are we doing so far? Everybody understanding, remembering that when you take an even numbered root, like a square root, you need plus or minus, and an odd numbered root, you do not. Okay, let's take a trip to the next page. Okay, number 4. I've got to isolate that value. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 2. So I get x raised to the negative 3/4 is equal to 1/4 divided by 2. Anybody know? Anybody? Anybody? 1/8. Very good. Okay, so for those of you that are wondering how I got that, if I take 1/4 and I divide it by 2, which is really 2 over 1, when you divide fractions, it's like multiplying by the reciprocal. So it's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So in that case, that's how I ended up with my 1/8. Or you could double check it in the calculator just to make sure that you were correct. All right, remember, we don't need to take care of this negative exponent because when I raise it to its reciprocal, it's going to take care of that. So now we have x equals, now on the right hand side I need to take care of this. So this is now going to become 8 to the positive 4/3. All right, we are going to take the cubed root of 8, and when we get done doing that, we're going to raise it to the 4th power. Cubed root of 8 is 2. All right, now raise 2 to the 4th power for me. Nice. You guys are doing great at these. All right, we have 16 there. Okay, now number 5. You have a binomial, and that whole entire binomial is being raised to the 2/3 power. So I am going to raise everything over here to the 3/2. So when I do that, remember these variables, these exponents are just going to multiply together to give you 1. So this side, the left-hand side, just becomes 2x plus 3. And over here we have 9 raised to the 3/2. So that's going to end up being the square root of 9, all raised to the 3rd power. So we have 2x plus 3 is equal to, all right, now, what is the square root of 9? Oh, plus or minus 3. Nice, you remembered. And then we're going to cube that. So notice I haven't really done anything with the left-hand side here in a little bit, but that's okay. Plus or minus 3 raised to the 3rd power, that's going to be plus or minus 27. So now 2x plus 3 could be equal to positive 27, or 2x plus 3 could equal negative 27. So here's where we're going to end up with two different answers. So this one over here, we subtract 3, so we get 2x equals 24, divide both sides by 2, and we have a value of 12. Now if I come over here, if I subtract 3, I end up with negative 30, and then if I divide by 2, I end up with negative 15. So my two answers are 12 and negative 15. Okay, make sure you go ahead and check for extraneous solutions, make sure they both work. Okay, remember you can store those values in your calculator, put the equation in just as it's written on your paper, and the calculator will tell you true or false. If it's false, remember to reject your answer. Now, in number 6, before I can raise it to its reciprocal, I've got to divide both sides by 2. So we have the quantity x minus 2 raised to the 2/3 power is equal to 25. All right, reciprocal is going to be 3/2. So we're going to raise both sides to the 3/2. So that's going to leave us with x minus 2 is equal to power over root. So we're going to take the square root of 25 and we're going to raise it to the 3rd power. All right, I'm taking the square root. What do I need to remember with my answer? That's right, plus or minus 5. Okay, now if I cube plus or minus 5, I end up with x minus 2 equals plus or minus 125. So now I could have x minus 2 equals 125, or I could have x minus 2 equals negative 125. All right, we're going to add 2 to both sides on the left here, and we end up with a nice value of 127. If I add 2 over here, I end up with a nice number of negative 123. So you have your two values, 127 and negative 123 there. Okay, if you had any difficulty with this lesson, make sure you rewind it, watch different parts of it. In class, we will be doing some practice questions. I think the main thing that I want you to remember for this one is when you're taking the square root or the 4th root or the 6th root, if it's an even numbered root, remember your answer has to be plus or minus. Those types of questions are going to be on your quiz and your test. You have to remember it's got to be plus or minus. Okay, odd roots, you don't have to worry about it. Even roots, please remember plus or minus when you're finding the solutions. All right, have a great morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're watching this video, and I'll see you guys in class.